Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner, a place where we talk about everything that is geek, whether it be comics, TV, movies, or video games. And with Man of Steel out this month, this whole month has been completely and totally devoted to my favorite superhero, Superman. And last week, as you know, we talked about what were, to me, some of the best and worst Superman stories ever written in the history, in the whole 75-year history of Superman. And this week, to wrap up Superman month, I'm going to talk about a little bit about what I think the cultural significance of Superman has been in the 75 years since he's started. And like I said, 75 years of Superman, and 75 years. I mean, Superman started. Superman been around 75 years. To me, that's longer than any. That is longer than any other fictional character in media or the pop culture eye or anything. I mean, when Superman started in 1938, there was no such thing as the comic book that we know as we know it today. I mean, used to they had what they called the funny books. I mean, you had like little comic strips, like the funny comic strips, or this, that, and like just maybe they had little mystery books and stuff like that. But you never had anything like the comic book superhero. I mean, that was a foreign concept back then. And back in the day, Superman, when it first started, it was rejected. I mean, when Sigler Schuster first created Superman, he was essentially a villain in the little science fiction book that they did, and he was essentially a villain with telepathic abilities to try and rule the earth. But in the end, but later on, they decided to take the character and said, what if he was, instead of a villain, he was a hero to the hero, an avenger to the little guy, protector of the little guy. And I've read one Superman panel with read a caption, one Superman panel, they call him the champion of the oppressed, and that's how they saw him as. And instead of making him like a telepath or telekinetic, they made him like a strong man, like Samson from the Bible or Hercules from Greek myth. And they said they made him like super strong, super fast, nearly invulnerable. I mean, when he first started, Superman, knives would shatter off of him, bullets would shatter off him, but he would get hurt by certain things. But over time, he became more and more invulnerable. And when they first brought him to all the different comic book publishers, they hated it. They didn't like it at all. And they figured, and then when they brought it to DC, they put it in there for like one issue, figuring it wasn't going to do any good, and it turned out to be a smash hit. They loved it, and by doing that, the superhero genre was born. I mean, he became an instant hit. I mean, within a year, you had figures, you had dolls, you had figures, you had different toys, you had a balloon of him in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. You had somebody dressing up like him at the World's Fair, and I mean, it just became a hit culturally. I mean, you had later in the years to come, you had movies. You had movies. You had TV shows. I mean, you had cartoons in the theaters, made by the same folks who made like Betty Boop and Popeye. They made those, and to me, they're some of the best cartoons and Superman cartoons ever made. And they're the first animated Superman, and you had the first Superman, Kirk Allen, the first actor to ever portray him. And you just had all these TV shows, and the next 75 years, you had TV shows, cartoons, movies, video games, all this stuff. And I said he's just so permeated into the culture. I mean, you have, when Batman was first invented, They actually told he looked at Bob. They told their guys there he was such a hit that they said bring us the next Superman, and so started the process that wound up with Batman. I mean, Batman gets a lot of coverage nowadays, but if it weren't for Superman, what the impact that Superman made on entertainment and culture and everything, you wouldn't have Batman, you wouldn't have Wonder Woman, you wouldn't have Green Lantern, you wouldn't have the Justice League, you wouldn't have DC Comics, you wouldn't even have Marvel Comics. I mean, if it weren't for Superman, there would be no superheroes, and then I said, then there would be, well, what you see behind me would not exist. I mean, there would be. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, you wouldn't have this such awesome characters to read about. I mean, if it weren't for just two guys creating one man in a blue suit and a red and blue suit and a red cape that could bend steel, would change the course of rivers, bend steel with bare hands, run faster than a speeding bullet, and fly higher than the highest plane. I mean, you wouldn't have such a great character that would set about the creation of so many other characters, like I said, Batman, Superman, and even in Marvel, like Captain America and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, ones like that. And to show you the kind of impact on entertainment that it had, there have even been other comic book publishers to even have their own versions of Superman as a tribute. I mean, think about it. You have, in Marvel Comics, they have at least 2 or 3 characters that are, you might as well say, Superman knockoffs. One particular that I could think of is the Gladiator. In X-Men, they debuted the character of the part member of the leader of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, and he straight out is Superman. I mean, he has the blue skin, the pointed, the Spock-like ears, the big fan of blue hair on his head. But you look at the suit, the powers. He's Superman in a nutshell, just with different color skin and different hairstyle. I mean, gracious, even his name is an homage to Superman. It's an amalgamation of his Kryptonian name Kal-El and his Earth name of Kal-Ark. His name is Kal-Ark, and I've actually read in other places that the whole Shi'ar Imperial Guard is supposed to be an homage to the Legion of Superheroes, Superboy, and the Legion of Superheroes. But as I said, that's Marvel's iteration of Superman. That's Marvel's iteration of Superman, other than Hyperion, other than the character of Hyperion, which has had 2 different incarnations. One that looks like the all-American superhero, and the other one that kind of is a blonde guy in a red and yellow suit. It's supposed to be like Superman, but their main Superman is Gladiator. I think that, like I said, they have Gladiator. There have been like Image Comics has a character called Supreme, which is, he has white hair and a red and white suit, but he's Superman through and through. I mean, you look at all these other comics and like Dark Horse and Top Cow and all these ones, and all these other Dynamite comics. You look at all these other comics, and you're bound to find a character in there somewhere that is a carbon copy of Superman. I mean, like I said, Marvel has Gladiator. And Marvel has Gladiator. Image has Supreme. Dark Horse has that in their in-league comic. They had one named Astonish Man. I mean, you had all these other. I mean, you had, so you have all these other ones that have their base. I don't know if you call it parody or homage to Superman. Sometimes you had parodies of Superman. I mean, hey, even the movie Megamind, the DreamWorks movie Megamind, They have a character in that named Metro Man, and he is Superman essentially. I mean, in the end, he proves himself that he ain't. He basically just, in the end, turns his back on the people he protected just to go after it, just because he gets tired of it. But still, it's Superman. It's their version of Superman. Metro Man is their version of Superman. They call it parody or like I said, their version of Superman. And I said, he is so iconic. And the very first image of Superman, is, of course, everybody knows, is the one, Action Comics #1, where he's picking up the car over and smashing the car. And that image has been so replicated so much over the years. I mean, it's appeared on from Spider-Man, an issue of Spider-Man with him lifting a police car over his head. It's appeared in issue 120, I think it's 124 of Superman, where it has a creature dressed up in his outfit and has a car over his head doing the same thing. And as a matter of fact, I have an image right here that I just bought yesterday at the comic store. And keep in mind, this is the property of the owner, not me. Regular show #1. See what it is? It's Muscle Man dressed up in a cape and a Superman-like shirt, smashing in that same iconic pose, smashing a golf cart into the side of a rock. And it's the same iconic pose as the original Action Comics #1. And matter of fact, I saw again recently where on Free Comic Book Day they had something called Ugly Doll Comics, and that comic and that front and that cover was an homage to Action Comics #1. Had the same car smashing scene and everything. As a matter of fact, they even had an issue long ago, a few years ago, of probably about 10 years ago, of another version of Superman, Mr. Majestic, assuming that same pose on the front of Superman 201 of smashing that car, because he came over from another dimension. Superman disappeared and he came over from another dimension, essentially doing his job for a little while, you might as well say. I mean, and it's that same pose. That same pose. That is so ingrained and into the culture that everybody does an homage to it. Almost everybody you can imagine in comics, that whenever they do a comic, they're going to want to do an homage to Action Comics #1, the one who essentially the comic essentially launched the comic book that essentially brought comics into the mainstream and launched superheroes. Because if it wasn't for that, comic books wouldn't be around as prevalently as they are today. I think it's because of Action Comics #1 and Superman. Superman is the reason why we have superhero comics, and Action Comics is the reason why the popularity is on all the superhero comics and launching superhero comics is why comic books are so prevalent today. And why I think even with the digital comics and everything, I don't think print comics are going away anytime soon. Because of Action Comics #1. It will always be print comics and everything. And it's just, I mean, it's all because of Superman. It's all because of Superman. And I said there will always be. I said and no doubt there'll be even more homages to Superman in the future, particularly Action Comics #1. Action Comics #1. I'm surprised they haven't done anything yet with Gladiator assuming that scene. Don't think they ever thought of it though, but they probably would do it. I mean, it's all because of Superman that there are superhero comics, TV shows, cartoons, video games. I mean, it's all because and movies. I said if it weren't for Superman, Hollywood probably would have been in dire straits right now, trying to figure up a new. I mean, somehow superheroes probably would have come into it, but not. But it wouldn't be the same as it was, and the same as it is now. it wouldn't be the same. I mean, you wouldn't. The superheroes wouldn't have the same feel to them. They'd feel. I mean, they would feel like something new, but they wouldn't have the same feel to them as we have now. And if it wasn't for them creating Superman in 1938, or coming out with Superman in the 1930s, then we wouldn't have as. And then we wouldn't have the superheroes that we have nowadays. There would have never been the Power Rangers or anything like that, or Iron Man or anything of that kind. And it's all because of Superman, because of 75 years of Superman. And to me, and I said, I'm glad they created Superman because he's, like I said, he's my #1 favorite superhero. More so than Batman, more so than anything in Marvel. And I said, and the fact that he's so permeated the culture that they've created all these. Every company has their own knockoff, rip-off, whatever, homage, whatever you want to call it, of Superman. Their own version of Superman. Proves you to just how much he's permeated the culture. And like I said, and the fact that he has endured 75 years shows that even though Batman, even though they all the media even though they're always putting Spider-Man out there for kids or Batman for the kids and stuff, Avengers and stuff, Superman will never go away. If it wasn't for Superman, they wouldn't have a Batman or a Spider-Man or Avengers to constantly peddle the kids. If it wasn't for Superman, there wouldn't be no other superhero. There would be no superheroes. Superman will always be remembered as the first and the greatest, to me, superhero of them all. And like I said, he'll always be my favorite, even though this New 52 garbage is going on. He'll always be Superman. The one I always will. Superman will still be my #1 favorite hero. I don't read the New 52, but I still read Superman. I read the classics, and I read the classics. I read Smallville. I read Superman Beyond, and I can't wait to start reading this new Adventures of Superman series that's has started when it finally starts in print. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to read it because it's the classic Superman in comics again, and I can't wait to start reading. And so to me, Superman will always be the #1 greatest superhero in comics, in TV, in movies, and video games. If they ever make a good game, and they keep making good games like Injustice or Mortal Kombat versus DC. And like I said, if it wasn't for Superman, you wouldn't have any other superhero. And it's because of Superman, you have superheroes and you have comics. And to me that it's just awesome to have comics and superheroes to read about. I mean, it's just cool. It makes everybody feel like a kid again when you read a comic. And it's just awesome to have that feeling. And I guess that's it for this week's edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner. And I hope you've enjoyed this month of Superman related shows. And as always, if you have a comment about the show, drop it in the comment box. And so if you have any ideas or things you want to hear me talk about on the show, as always, leave a comment. I would love to hear your ideas. I'm always looking for new things to talk about. Like I said, I would love to hear your ideas. I really would. And I said, just let me know what you think. And I'll see y'all next time.